On November 4th, 2016, the 13th game within the Call of Duty franchise released. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was the fourth futuristic title, as well as the third title having advanced movement. Infinite Warfare was the last Call of Duty of what is widely known as the jetpack era. Because of this, the game was absolutely hated even before release, as it set the record for the most disliked gaming trailer on YouTube.
Oh, hell no!
Most of the player base moved on from the game, either returning to Black Ops 3 or playing the newly released Call of Duty 4 Remastered. Today, I'm going to revisit Infinite Warfare to see just how good or bad the game holds up to be. Infinite Warfare's campaign didn't reinvent the wheel story-wise, so you can expect your typical Star Wars-like story in the future of outer space. You play as Lieutenant Reyes, who's accompanied by supporting characters Salter, Ethan, Omar, and others that I'm not really going to name because they don't have much screen time to begin with. The story wasn't bad per se, however, it was kinda lackluster in certain ways. My biggest gripe is the antagonist of the story, Seylan Koch, which is probably one of, if not the worst villain of the Call of Duty franchise. There's never a full-on introduction of how or why he became the bad guy, and really his only motivation is absolute power, which is something that's been beat to death as a motive. He's extremely forgettable and really holds down the narrative, which is a shame because when done right, villains can make the story so much better and memorable. The premise is basically the Settlement Defense Front, led by our antagonist, attacks Earth during a military parade, igniting the war between the SDF and SATO, who are basically like NATO, but it's everyone on Earth. So now SATO has to respond to the attack and loosen the SDF's control over the galaxy. Now as for our protagonist, he's definitely a better written character, and it's interesting to see his struggles between winning the battle and losing his own men. Salter is his right-hand man and sometimes challenges Reyes morally, but doesn't really add anything else to the story. Ethan, on the other hand, is one of my favorite characters of the game. He's an AI robot soldier that's been constructed with his own personality. As the game progresses, Ethan goes from not being taken seriously and just pushed to the side to earning the respect of even his most critical peers. The pacing of the story is a little rushed and pretty short, as I think there's only like 5 or 6 main missions. Now as we look at the gameplay, this is so far the only Call of Duty campaign to entirely be in outer space, with the exception of a couple missions on Earth. Because of this, we're introduced to new, fresh scenery, from gunfights on Earth to gunfights on Mars, multiple moons, spaceships, and even asteroid belts. The atmosphere, no pun intended, of the game has a lot of variety and is visually appealing. There's 2 main ways to fight the enemy, one being as a typical soldier like any other COD, and the other being flying your Jackal, which is pretty much a featured fighter jet. Some missions consist of both, while others prioritize one over the other. Utilizing the Jackal is one of the new features we get, and as fun as it is, it can get a little repetitive. There's only like 3 different enemy spacecraft variants, so after using the Jackal like 3 times, you kind of find yourself just doing the same shit every time. I would have liked to see more enemy variants. One thing I did like though, is being able to customize your Jackal with different attachments to better suit your needs. Speaking of attachments, outside of the Jackal, you can also customize your own loadout and even pick a recommended loadout which changes for each mission. You have your advanced movement, which is an exact copy of Black Ops 3's movement, and when in zero gravity, you're able to grapple to cover and even your enemies. You have 2 slots for your tactical and lethal abilities, and these abilities make for a much more dynamic approach to gunfights, as you have new things like hacking enemy robots and overriding their control, and throwing down seeker bots that jump on enemies and blow up, or even catching enemies off guard with anti-gravity grenades. You also earn suit upgrades that permanently enhance basic functions. By completing side missions, you're able to unlock new upgrades, attachments, and weapons. Oh, and by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this campaign has the most side missions out of any other in the franchise. The side missions allow for further progression in terms of unlocks and also provide different level designs, but there's one big issue I have with them. They're just too short. I'm aware side missions aren't supposed to be long, but I was literally finishing some of them in like 8 minutes and even one of them in 5 minutes without even trying to be fast. There's also this wanted board that reveals certain enemies that have a bounty on them, but at the end of the day, it's really just a gimmick because quite often I found myself just stumbling across these wanted enemies like any other enemy NPC in the game. There was no boss fight or any climactic battles against these wanted personnel, and honestly, it was a huge miss. Overall, the campaign was pretty forgettable and lacked memorable characters besides Ethan, and really doesn't stand up to the juggernauts of the Call of Duty franchise in terms of storytelling, such as Black Ops or the original Modern Warfare series. Infinite Warfare's multiplayer is essentially a Black Ops 3 wannabe. Taking a look at the gameplay, you get the same thrusting movement that you get with BO3, which by many fans is held as the better type of advanced movement. Another almost one-for-one copy of Black Ops 3 was the addition of Specialists. In this game, they are referred to as combat rigs. The combat rigs are actually surprisingly a lot more fleshed out than the Specialists in Black Ops 3. Each rig has a payload and trait. Within the payload section, you have a choice between 3 options of a powerful weapon or special ability that you can use once charged up. Alongside the payload, you also have an option between 3 traits. Traits are a passive ability that will always be affecting you. This gives a lot more customization options and really gives the player lots to explore. Looking over to our arsenal of weapons, there are only 52 weapons, which I think is definitely on the lower side, especially by the end of its life cycle. Most, if not all of the guns are pretty balanced, as I never found myself at a huge disadvantage using specific guns. However, that's using just the base versions. Just like Advanced Warfare, this game has different weapon variants with various rarities. And of course, the higher the rarity, the more powerful special trait each one has. Although the pay to win factor isn't as bad as it was in Advanced Warfare, it's still seen here as some weapons have ridiculously strong traits. There are challenges and other ways to earn these variants other than getting lucky with supply drops, so I will give this game some praise there. Weapon variety as a whole is actually pretty decent. For the first time since the Reaper and COD Ghosts, we have certain guns that can transform into a completely different gun class. For example, the Reaper returns as a SMG that can switch into assault rifle mode. There's the Type 2 assault rifle that can split into 2 Akimbo full auto pistols. There's even a sniper that can turn into an assault rifle. As cool as this is, there's only a small amount of guns that are unique like this, so it becomes kind of a gimmick that wasn't capitalized on. Before we completely dump the topic of variants, there's one more thing that got variants, which were score streaks. I actually found score streak variants pretty interesting. Some variants allowed a certain streak to last longer at the expense of less health, while others added a new feature. Game modes are a huge downgrade. You have your usuals with a couple new ones that aren't that great and only 3 party modes, a huge miss in my eyes. Progression is okay, you have 10 prestiges and master prestige after that, weapon prestiges, and even mission team levels. With mission teams, you choose a faction that gives you challenges. When completed, you get rewards like XP and weapon variants. Each faction provides its own unique rewards. I like the concept, but it can end up being a lengthy grind just to get a specific reward. There are a total of 13 maps not including DLC. This is kinda shit considering older games like the original Modern Warfare 2 launched with 14 maps. I will say, however, all of these maps have good flow, and I actually couldn't find a map that was absolute dog shit. Very impressive, and I think it's widely overlooked with this game. The only issue is, this is just a worse Black Ops 3 multiplayer with only several things done better. Even the visuals look slightly worse, colors are dull and aren't as vibrant, and even sound effects sound reused and outdated. Even the menu background took a loss compared to Black Ops 3. Because of this, most people stayed back on Black Ops 3. Overall, the multiplayer was forgettable and had more misses than upsides. It's bland and has no soul of its own. At its core, it still manages to uphold the fast-paced arcade shooter feel that all Call of Duties prior had, which accounts to something, I guess. Not the worst multiplayer, but definitely bottom 5.
Hey, what's with the Letterman jacket?
And the bling!
It appears our wardrobes reflect the parts we're auditioning for. And clearly, I'm the nerd.
Ugh, you've got to be kidding me.
He shoots! He scores!
Ugh.
epic!
Woo! Now that's how we drop the mic. Yay!
Infinite Warfare Zombies did a complete 180 with the direction they decided to take. Instead of leaning towards a more serious tone, they gave us a Scooby-Doo-like atmosphere, and it actually worked. The entire experience has an 80s retro vibe, with all maps taking place around the era and even including prominent celebrities like David Hasselhoff and Cassandra Peterson. The characters are likable, funny, and pretty easy to remember. The story involves a group of actors who get trapped inside a supernatural film set by a famous evil director. It's a fun and wacky story that's a fresh new taste of zombies. Base maps are usually a hit or miss, however Zombies in Spaceland was actually a spectacular map. The aesthetic is awesome as you really get the full picture of an 80s theme park overrun by zombies. In fact, throughout the map, there's even actual 80s songs being played, like the Final Countdown. There's even a roller coaster you can ride on. By successfully hitting targets on the roller coaster, completing challenges, and playing old school video games, by the way, there's an entire arcade with tons of playable games, you earn tickets. These tickets can be used to unlock various boosts and abilities, as well as upgrades and customization. Oh, and the monkey bomb in this game is an old school radio box that makes zombies breakdance. The layout of the map is great and provides several areas to train zombies. The map is pretty large and is colorfully vibrant with very unique traps. Now the Easter egg on this map is one hell of a challenge, as there are plenty of steps with a pretty difficult boss fight against an alien. Although the gameplay experience overall is pretty standard and familiar for zombies, I think the aesthetic and complete shift in tone makes up for it. Infinite Warfare Zombies can definitely stand on its own feet, and I'd love to see something like this return. At the end of the day, Infinite Warfare as a whole was mediocrely mid. Not the worst, but definitely the bottom tier of the franchise. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.
There's such a difference between us and a million.